I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my 5-star reads for April, May, and June of 2024. So I did this video at the beginning of the year for my 5-star reads for the first quarter of the year, so for January, February, and March. So I want to keep this going for the rest of the year. So now we have officially finished the second quarter of the year. Can't believe that. But so yeah, we're going to talk about the 5-star books that I read for April, May, and June for this year. So I'm going to just quickly run through these. Of course, as always, if you want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I read, any of these books as well, because I definitely gushed over these. I do review every single book that I read on Goodreads, and you can always get to that through the links in the description of my videos. Also, I just wanted to say, so I'm doing my 5-star reads that are like true 5 stars, like not ones that I rated 4.5, but rounded up, not any that I reread, because I feel like, you know, I didn't read those for the first time. So just like true first time reading 5-star reads. So with all of that out of the way, let's just jump into it. So for April, I had 8 5-star reads for the month. So let's get into them. First up is Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. Penn Cole is a new to me author. I believe this is their debut series, possibly. This is the second book in the Kindred's Curse saga series, and this book was just everything and more. I did read the first book in the series, which is Spark of the Everflame, but basically this is a fantasy romance series on Kindle Unlimited where we follow one character throughout all of the books. So it's a continuation series where you have to kind of read the books in order. And so this is the second book. Like I said, book 1, it was just okay. It was a good like intro to the fantasy romance world and kind of all the characters. But book 2, everything, like 0 flaws, no notes. Loved this book so much. I know that it's pretty much everybody's favorite book in the series so far, and totally agree. It was just everything I wanted. Can't say too much about the plot because it is a continuation of book 1. But basically in this world we have magic and powers, and we have these like descended who are basically like immortals who ended up coming down from their world and kind of mixing with people who didn't have magic. So their magic's like a little bit dulled down now, and they're kind of treated as like royals, and there's like people who are in like lower working classes and kind of all of those things. So very much like royals, court politics, intrigue, all of that, magic, the heroine kind of learning about the world around her, and we get to see that through her eyes and kind of as she unfolds things as well. So yeah, basically goes from there, and this book is kind of where the romance picks up. It's a slow burn and it's so good. Definitely recommend this series if you haven't read it yet. There are 3 books out currently, and the 4th book comes out later this summer. I cannot wait to get to that one. All right, my next 5-star read in April was Midnight of Ashes by Tessa Hale. This is the second book in her Dragons of Ember Hollow series. Obsessed with this entire series. The first book, Twilight of Embers, was on my 5-star reads for like January, February, and March. So no surprise that the second release was for April as well. I love this series so much, and this special edition hardcover is like absolutely stunning. I can't get enough of it. I love it so much. Anyways, this is a Dragon Shifters, Why Choose, paranormal, kind of like romantic-y vibes, and I'm just like obsessed with this series. The 3rd and final book comes out in July, and I cannot wait because it's like the finishing of the trilogy. Each book leaves off on a cliffhanger, and I can't wait to get to that book because of where this book left off. So in this one, we're following the heroine and her heroes, and so I love how in this Why Choose, all of the heroes feel very unique and different. I love how they all bring a different vibe to their relationship with heroine, to their relationship kind of with dealing with each other, because all the heroes know each other and they're dragon shifters, and it is so stinking good. Highly recommend this series. Even if you're like new to Why Choose, I definitely recommend it as well. It's a great like intro to Why Choose, and I feel like a good example of Why Choose when all of the heroes and the characters feel super different and like you can tell them apart. So love that, and yeah, just love this book and series so much. Next up, I have Pirate Girls by Penelope Douglas. So this is the second book in their Hellbent series, and I had such a fun time with this one. I loved it even more than book 1, which was Falls Boys. So this series is a spin-off kind of second generation series from their Fall Away series, which the first book in that series is a Bully, which I read and ate that series up like years and years ago, probably like 7, 8 years ago at this point. Absolutely loved them and was obsessed with that series. And so this second generation story kind of like hits different for me because I have all that nostalgia of seeing now those couples as parents and seeing their children and just being back in this like Shelburne Falls world that I love so much. So I definitely come in with that nostalgia factor of loving this series. Basically in here, this one is the heroine. She ends up kind of being like traded or held prisoner, so to speak, at their different like rival high schools. And so where they each take like a pirate kind of captive for a week. They have like a rebel week, I think it's called, Pirates Week, something like that. Anyways, so they take her kind of kidnapped, and she has to like go to school and go through life at that school for the week instead. And so basically while there, one of her like best friends, who she was like best friends with these twins growing up, and now the twins have had something come up between them and she doesn't know what. And so now the twins go to different high schools, and so one of them is at this rival high school where she is at now, and it kind of goes from there. I just was obsessed with this and their obsession with each other. I just had like such a good time with this one. All right, next up is Burnout by Rebecca Jinchak. So I jumped into this one one and absolutely loved it so much. It was so good. It was everything I wanted and more. I feel like Rebecca Jinchak's writing, I've been reading her for a few years now, and I feel like it's just getting like stronger and stronger, and this book was like the perfect example of what she is and all of her like sports romances. So highly recommend. Basically in here we have the hero, who is a motocross kind of driver racer, and the heroine is an Olympic gymnast. Like she even has Olympic medals, like she is a big deal. And so basically she went through an injury, and so she hasn't kind of been on the same level, or is kind of like worried about getting back out there and proving that she can still, you know, do the game and all of that. And then the hero, he's kind of cocky, he's new to the race scene, and he got like let go from a team. So he kind of wants to like up his game and just like show that he is good and he has skills and all of that. And so one of his like teammates or somebody he knows ends up recommending the heroine, and they're like, hey, you should go to like this Olympic gymnast for help, because like it would totally help like your game and learning all these tricks and kind of things like that. So he's very like cocky, kind of bad boy, has an attitude, and kind of makes a thing about her like being a princess and wearing pink all the time. And so I just loved the banter that they have immediately. It's so stinking good. Highly recommend. Definitely do the audio. The audiobook is so good for this one. I love Rebecca Jinchak's audiobooks in particular. And so yeah, definitely recommend Burnout. If you haven't got to it and you want like a fun, spicy, bantery, like sports romance with like different sports being portrayed, highly recommend. The second book in the series is coming out in July, and I can't wait. Next up is Fourth Degree by Nikki Castle. This is the 5th book in her Fight Game series, which is an MMA kind of centered sports romance series. So like I just said with the previous book, I love sports romance being presented that like we don't always see. I feel like hockey, football, those kind of take over. So it's nice seeing something different. So like I said, this is set around MMA. This one is forbidden, and it's between a coach and a athlete, and it is just so good. I love this one. Has found family. I love everything that Nikki Castle writes, honestly, and this is one of my favorites in the series. Loved it so much. So good. Next is Unsteady by Peyton Corinne. So this is the indie cover. There is a newer cover, which I love as well, and might have to grab it because it's been like traditionally picked up, which I'm so excited for her. But anyways, so this one is so good. I meant to get to this one last year and just never got to it, and I'm kicking myself for not getting to it sooner. But then again, I'm glad that I finally did get to it. So there is that. Highly recommend checking this one out. This one is the hero's a hockey player, the heroine is a figure skater, and it is just everything. This one is very emotional, and it deals with mental health rep. Really great representation of that. I liked in here how the heroine takes care of her younger siblings. Basically in this one we see the hero, and he actually got injured during the Frozen Four like competition during the last season of his hockey, and so now he is in a new year kind of gearing up and trying to get back into the game. He like fell on the ice and had a brutal hit, got a concussion, and so he's totally been kind of like messed up ever since then. He can't like even get on the ice or get around these like panic attacks that he's having, and so he's been kind of sneaking in and doing ice time like by himself at night at the rink, and he's in the middle of a panic attack, which basically she sees him going through it, and so she ends up talking to him, kind of pulling him out of that, has him listen to music, and they just kind of start connecting. So they kind of spend time together while they're both on the ice in the morning, and so it kind of goes from there where eventually they form a friendship and their relationship. And then yeah, I just love this one. It felt so real and so good. Like I said, emotional, so good. Love the mental health rep, and I can't wait for more from this author in the future. All right, and then my last 5-star read for April was Where We Promise by Ashley Munoz. This is the 3rd book in her Stone Riders MC series. This is a small town MC, and it is just so good. This one has Marriage of Convenience, where basically in here the heroine is pregnant with somebody else's baby. So basically she grew up in MCs, and the hero did as well, and another friend they grew up with in the MC as well. And so basically in here the heroine was always pulled to the hero of the book, but he kind of would think he wasn't good enough for her, or that she could do better without him, or didn't want to be a part of that life. So he kind of took a step back when they were younger, and so she got with the other guy instead because he was showing interest in like pursuing her. And so she got with that guy, ended up pregnant with his baby, and now that guy's the literal worst. Treated her like crap publicly, like within the MC, literally treated her like trash. And so the hero ended up kind of ghosting her away and protecting her. And so now the next step in his protection of her is a Marriage of Convenience, where he's kind of like not wanting to do it because he has feelings for her, but he doesn't think he's good enough for her. Ugh, it's so good. Like the my wife moments, and also like that's my baby moments. Oh my God, so good. Obsessed with this one so much. Very angsty and like drawn out. I love this whole series. Definitely check it out. All right, next we're jumping into May. So I had 7 5-star reads for May. So first up is Fragile Sanctuary by Catherine Cowles. I absolutely love this book so much. Catherine Cowles like always hits. If you want romantic suspense, small town, she is that author to try. This book is absolutely stunning. I'm obsessed with the colors and the foiling and the sprayed edges in the back. Just so stinking pretty. Like I could look at this book all day. I'm obsessed with the colors they used for this one. All right, so this book has all of my favorite tropes. So it is small town, romantic suspense, grumpy sunshine. The hero is the heroine's brother's best friend. We have kind of like a little bit of hate to love banter in the beginning. There's suspense in this one. And in here, the hero was a former like FBI kind of serial profiler. And there is like this serial killer who is about and kind of coming back into the scene. And so So that's kind of happening in the background as well. He has to protect the heroine at times. It has found family. There's like foster siblings, adopted siblings, all of those things. I love that found family aspect. And in here, basically the heroine is trying to renovate her family's house, which is like this old Victorian house that was damaged, which you see in the prologue of the story, which is super heartbreaking. Anyways, now it's years later, she's trying to fix up that house, and the hero is the contractor who ends up working with her because he works for her brother's kind of construction company. And so it kind of goes from there. And then, like I said, he has to protect her along the way, and it's just forced proximity. So good. Love this one so much. If you haven't checked out Catherine Cowles, highly recommend jumping into this series because there's only one book out right now, so you could totally catch up before book 2 comes out in August. Next up is a fantasy romance. So I have The Dawn of the Cursed Queen by Amber V. Nicole. Absolutely love the series so much. This is book 3 in her Gods and Monsters series, which you totally need to read the series in order. This is another fantasy romance series where it's a continuation. So each book kind of leaves off on a cliffhanger and you need to continue on in the series. We're following the same couple throughout, and it just kind of like builds on the world and the characters as we go. I think it's slated to be like 7 or 8 books, so we have a while to go. This is book 3. I've loved every book in the series and given them all 5 stars. So I can't say too much about this one because the plot and all that, if you haven't read the first books. So definitely go start with the Book of Azrael, which is the first book in the series. Absolutely love it. This basically, we follow gods and celestials and monsters. It has a very morally gray villainous characters. The heroine is villainous, which I love to see represented as well. So good. Like true enemies to lovers setup and just everything. I'm obsessed. Like high fantasy world building. Can't get enough of it. Can't wait for the next books in the series. Next is Here We Go Again by Alison Cochrane. I absolutely love this one so much. It's very emotional, so definitely know that going in. There is death that occurs on page. A lot of loss as well with like a parental figure, so definitely know that before going in. There's some other content warnings as well, which I have in my Goodreads. You can go check it out, but definitely emotional hitting. Like this isn't a fun time read, if that makes sense. It's definitely gonna hit you in all the feels, but this is a sapphic romance where basically the heroines were childhood friends, had a falling apart. They've been apart for years. Now they're back in one another's lives. They're both teachers working at the same school, and they just kind of like ignore each other and aren't around one another. And like we kind of figure out why as the story goes on. But basically in here, another teacher who was kind of like a father figure to them and was their teacher when they were growing up. And basically he's found out that he has cancer, and he is wanting to do this last road trip with them, with both of them, and go from the West Coast all the way to the East Coast in Maine to like a cabin that he owns. So he wants them to go with him on this last road trip of his for his life. So definitely emotional. I like to see the heroines in here kind of go through all of their feelings with that and all of their feelings with each other. A lot of like unresolved things that get dealt with as the story goes on. Very emotional. Love this one so much. Definitely my new favorite from this author. Highly recommend. All right, next up I have Queen Charlotte by Julia Quinn and Shonda Rhimes. So this is a co-written book after they did the Netflix adaptation of Queen Charlotte. This kind of like tied into it or was released at the same time, I think. If you haven't watched the Netflix adaptation, I highly recommend. It is so stinking good. Definitely like emotional damage. Will wreck you, will have you crying, will have you all up in your feels, but it's so like epic and beautiful, and the emotions and the romance is just so good. So basically this is following Queen Charlotte and King George in this like fictionalized kind of story about their lives. If you know the Bridgerton series, then you know about Queen Charlotte. So basically if you've seen Bridgerton, this is like a spin-off of that, just following Queen Charlotte and King George's relationship throughout the years and all of their like trials and tribulations and all of that. Very emotional if you know kind of the backstory of the couple and the characters of what they're going through. And this one is just so good. I loved it so much. I think I liked the book more than I liked the show. I love the show, but in here it was just so beautiful. We follow Queen Charlotte, King George, of course, and we see Lady Danbury, who was featured throughout the Bridgerton series. Unlike the show though, like how we see Lady Violet in the Queen Charlotte adaptation, in here we don't have any of Lady Violet, which I was actually kind of fine with because I feel like leaving her in the Bridgerton world works for me. And so this was just fun to focus on the friendships and the relationships between Queen Charlotte, King George. Queen Charlotte's kind of like aide to Brimsley, who's always like 5 feet behind her. And then of course with Lady Agatha Danbury as well. Just loved those like close-knit relationships that they all have throughout the years. So yeah, highly recommend if you've watched the show or watched the adaptation and you want more, highly recommend the book, especially on audio. It's so good. All right, next up I have Truly Madly Deeply by Alexandria Belfleur. I love this one so much. I realized when I read this, like I love every book that this author writes, so I don't know why I was so surprised that I loved this one too, but this one was just so good. I feel like it's not getting talked about a ton, and I had such a good time with this one. So in here, both of the characters are actually bisexual, which I loved that representation. In here, the heroine is actually a historical romance author and the hero is a divorce lawyer. They both end up on a podcast together to talk about kind of dating advice and kind of like their opposing thoughts, and it is just so much fun. So basically in here, like everybody thinks the heroine knows everything about happily ever afters in dating and romance, because I mean she's a historical romance writer, but basically her whole life got shaken up right before the podcast where she caught her fiance cheating on her. She just found out that her parents, who've been married for like 30+ years, and she always thought they were happy, and so in love, like they decided to take a break. So she's like, oh my God, what's happening with life? Do I even know anything about romance? Like, how am I going to give dating advice? And so she goes to the podcast, and the hero, like I said, he's a divorce lawyer. And so they banter on the podcast, and basically he kind of like ruffles her feathers, not in a good way. And she ends up leaving, not having a good time. And so he feels horrible because he's truly like a cinnamon roll. After the fact, he tries to track her down and make it up to her and have like another first chance meeting. And so they end up kind of becoming friends slowly, and their relationship goes from there. I loved in here how the heroine's very like prickly, has like some thorns around her that the hero has to break through. And then the hero as well, he has kind of like this emotional casing around him that she has to kind of break through as well. Absolutely love this one so much. Highly recommend. Please go check it out. All right, next up is a photo finish by Elsie Silver. So this is the second book in her Gold Rush Ranch series, which I have been loving this series. I think I'm actually loving this series more than Chestnut Springs. Like, I do love and have some favorites in Chestnut Springs, but I feel like this series right here is underrated, and you should definitely check it out because I've loved both books so far in the series. I've been reading them as the audios come out, and just so good. This one though is everything. Like, I loved it so much. It's second chance in kind of like a unique way, where basically the heroine and the hero met like over a year ago online, where basically they were on this kind of like a discourse type channel where people share like scandalous photos. And so the heroine shared some nudes and things, and so he was interested and they started to have a conversation, but he never showed his face. And so it kind of went from there for like, they talked like an entire year back and forth, and then eventually he kind of ghosted her, and so she felt super hurt because she thought it was going somewhere. And so now the heroine has taken a new job as a horse jockey, and so she's basically at this ranch, and the hero shows up because his family, I think, owns the ranch, works for the ranch, something like that. He shows up, and he of course knows her because he's seen her face before, and so immediately when she starts talking, he kind of calls her out by a name that they used on the like online site that they talked with, and so she immediately is like, oh my God, wait, what? Like, this is who you are? And so it kind of goes from there. So a little bit of like angry hatefulness, like we have to get over what happened in the past and confront that kind of feelings at first. And so basically the heroine ends up getting injured, and so she needs a place where she can kind of recoup and heal, where she lives like all on one floor because her apartment is like 2 levels. So she needs a place on the ranch where it's only 1 floor, like the bathroom, the kitchen, the bedroom, all on 1 level. And so the only place like suitable for that is his place. So she has to move in with him while she is getting better, and it goes from there. So angsty, and there's something that happens at the end of the story that I can't talk about because it's a spoiler, but oh my God, it's just everything and hits you in all the feels. So good. Highly recommend. A photo finish. All right, then my last 5-star read for May is Crossroads by Devney Perry. This one was actually a surprise to me because recent releases from this author I didn't super duper love, so I felt like her writing was kind of getting different, but this one, it feels like old school Devney Perry, if that makes sense. I've read all of her books, and this one feels like some of her beginning series to me, and kind of like what I used to love in her books. It has that classic small town western ranch Montana vibe, and here this one is a second chance, which of course, if you know me, I love a second chance romance. And in here the hero and the heroine actually were childhood friends turned lovers, now turned enemies to lovers again, which is one of my favorite subtropes ever. So I was eating it up, all the flashbacks of when they were children, when they first met. Basically her family was like wealthy and would always vacation at this Montana ranch that his family owned every year, and it was kind of like this whole like ranch vibe where you could do expeditions and kind of have these like camp out nights and go white water rafting and fish and kind of like all these things that the ranch put together. And so they would vacation there every summer, and she got to know the hero over time. Like, you start off seeing them I think when they're like 7 or 8, and it kind of goes from there as they grow up, as they become teenagers. They have this like secret relationship that fell apart because of reasons, and now you see it's years later, she's back in his life because she comes to the ranch and she's like, yeah, by the way, I'm the new owner of your family's ranch, and you work for me now. So it goes from there. It's so good. Highly recommend it. This one is actually published through Montlake, which is Amazon's publishing company. So if you download the book on Kindle Unlimited, you get the audiobook with it just to listen to while you have the KU checked out. Highly recommend. Definitely check it out. I actually want to reread it on audio soon because I loved it so much. All right, so now jumping into June, I had 3 5-star reads for the month. And so the first one is Forbidden King by Laura Pavlov. This is book 3 in her Magnolia Falls series, and I love this one so much. This one is Friends to Lovers, as well as the hero is the heroine's brother's best friend as well, and so they've kind of been always in each other's lives. The heroine actually also lived with the hero and his grandparents who raised him when she was a teenager because of some things in her family life, and so they have this like really strong connection and friendship, which I loved to see. It was so palpable, like believing all of their chemistry and history and their relationship. So basically in here they are both back in each other's lives, and it kind of goes from there with the heroine wanting to open up her own romance bookstore. And so we see the hero, he like has a construction company, so he's helping her build her dream like bookstore, which is so much fun. I love that as like a romance reader. Everybody wants somebody to build them like a library, right? So that little detail was so much fun. I love the entire like friend group that the series follows, that we've seen all the characters throughout. I really liked in here as well how the hero and the heroine both have feelings for one another and kind of both realize it at the same time and want to do something about it. So I love that kind of like mutual figuring it out together. So good. Highly recommend this one. It's very sweet and like I just loved it. Like as a Friends to Lovers fan, love this one. Next up is Bright Lights and Summer Nights by Kat Singleton. So this is the third and final book in her Black Tie Billionaire series, and I love this one so much. So I think I've talked about it before, how Black Ties and White Lies, the first book in the series, that one was just okay for me. It didn't super hit for me, like it wasn't my cup of tea, but I know why people do love it. I totally get it. But book 2 and book 3, so good. I love seeing Kat's writing grow as well. Like you can definitely see it throughout, and like the tropes of those books just hit more for me. So I love them both. But yeah, this is her newest release and I highly recommend if you want like the perfect summer steamy romance, this is it right here. This is set in the summer in the Hamptons. This has fake dating. The heroine is like 25 and she's having this like quarter life crisis is what she calls it, where she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. She feels like all of her other friends are getting married, having these like successful jobs, and she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. So basically one of her friends is like, well, go to my Hamptons house for the summer, go figure it out and like just chill, whatever. So she gets there and on the first night she crashes a party, ends up meeting the hero, and they start fake dating immediately because he's trying to get away from like one of his sister's friends and so it kind of goes from there where basically it kind of snowballs, where first they tell one person they're fake dating, then the hero's sister overhears, she tells their grandma, everybody finds out, and the heroine finds herself invited to all of the wedding festivities for the summer with him. So it was just so stinking good. The hero as well, didn't even mention he's a billionaire and he's also an NFL like famous football player, which was so fun. I just love this one. I loved how he falls first and he's obsessed with her and it's just so good. I also love the heroine's journey as well of like figuring out her life too. So good. Highly recommend. Definitely go grab it on Kindle Unlimited. Like I said, it just came out. Perfect summer romance. It also has like 6 straight chapters of spice. If that's your thing, go check it out. All right, and then my last 5-star read for June is Honeycut by Sierra Simone. So this is the second book in a trilogy from this author. This is like MMF. I think that's what we're going to be leaning to. Maybe MFM. I have no idea. But basically, there's an MM relationship, there's an MF relationship, there's another MF relationship. We'll see if they all three get on the same page and get together. I am absolutely loving this series. This is like my favorite series from Sierra Simone. It's just so addictive and so good. I love her very like lush writing that is like flowery, but also like sounds so smart, and just like love the way she writes. So good. Her prose is just amazing. Love this book so much. If you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. And now all 3 characters that we followed throughout the series are all on the same page in the same scenes together, which I loved seeing. Very steamy, very angsty. Basically in here we have a bodyguard, we have a kind of like very wealthy hero who owns like a club, and then we have the heroine who is in like an arranged marriage with one of the heroes, and it kind of goes from there. So good. They all have their own different things that they're working on and doing, and just so good. Definitely recommend and check out the whole series. All right, so those are all my 5-star reads that I've had so far for the second quarter of the year. So for April, May, and June of 2024. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, if you are going to go now pick any of these up. If I sold you on any of these books, let me know. I'd love to know. Definitely let me know in the comments your 5-star reads for the year. I would love to check them out, especially if I haven't read them yet. I would love to add them to my TBR. If you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments instead today to let me know that you watched this video, maybe leave me the headphones emoji since I have my like audiobook kind of trope shirt on today from Lila Junko. So yeah, leave me the headphones emoji. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.